Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 216th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today our panel will discuss school choice, specifically the advantages and disadvantages of allowing parents more control over their children's education. Today's discussion begins with Patty Haskins, former member of the Wadsworth City Council and the faculty of Wadsworth High, followed by Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired senior research chemist. Patty, for many years the public school system has served our country quite well, but in recent times we've fallen behind many other countries in measures of educational performance. Is it time for a change, and is school choice some form of a solution?
Well, first let me, just a little background. I have experience in both public and private education, as I taught here at Wadsworth schools and elsewhere for 36 years, so I'm quite well acquainted with the public school system. But I also chose to send my children for part of their education to Catholic schools. My daughter went through a Catholic school from preschool through 8th grade, and then attended Wadsworth High School. My son did just the opposite. He did attend the Elms for preschool and kindergarten, but then attended Wadsworth through 8th grade, but then finished his education at Walsh High School. So I've seen both the elementary and the high school positions there. In my opinion, I think that public schools are still doing a good job with our kids. I am quite pleased, and I guess it maybe will depend upon the school or your particular experiences that you have, but being in a position to compare quality of education between a public school and a private school, I do find that public schools are doing every bit as well as private schools are. The one interesting thing is that many people feel that public schools are not doing that well because they make comparisons and state report cards and so forth and so on. And the state, of course, does make a big deal about charting the outcomes of students in public schools. What you don't realize, though, is that the state does not have that amount of scrutiny on private and charter schools. They simply do not conform to the same rules as watchdogs as the public schools are. To make the assumption that they're doing better, not based upon assessment, to me is a problem. Also, assessment or comparison is quite difficult when a private or charter school can pick which students they want to have come into their realm. For my son to get into Walsh High School, he had to take a placement test. He had to score a certain level. They are not going to take any student that has had severe discipline problems. They're not going to take students, perhaps, that would require a lot of extra attention and therefore a lot of extra money in order to support that child, whereas the public school system is required to educate everyone, which is a good thing, because our state constitution provides for a free education for all students.
Excuse me, do you think that if, at, say, Wadsworth High School right now, if we had free and open opportunities to send students to private schools that were being paid for one way or another by taxpayers, and that transportation was going to be available at no cost to the parents, do you think that we would lose out of the Wadsworth High School some of the higher quality students and leaving, lowering the average performance of the?
I think you might. It depends upon the parent. I mean, there are those that are very loyal to their local community.
Yeah.
And so they want to be a part of activities within that local school.
Yeah.
I chose Catholic schools because I'm a Catholic.
Yeah.
That was my drive on that particular end. I am concerned, though, that they would not accept all students. And I think what would happen then is that if you do end up drawing off that top level of students, what's left for that local public school to educate are those that are not the top level, and of course then that's going to skew the scores. Also those that require a great deal of extra attention, whether for medical purposes or mental purposes, whatever, they're not going to be pulled in.
Excuse me, people complain about that in high school sports.
Oh,
that
absolutely.
The parochial schools, Catholic high schools, private high schools have a big advantage there.
Because they can recruit.
They can recruit. And,
well, yeah, technically they're not allowed to recruit.
Yeah, well,
they
I know,
do. But and the thing is, though, that some people don't realize. I mean, public schools recruit as well.
Sure.
And they I take that back. They don't necessarily recruit, but there are families that will sign over custody, technically, of their child
to grandparents or something.
Grandparents that live in a district that they want their child to attend. So it does happen, maybe not as on a greater scale, but that's the case. I mean, in Akron, in the Akron school system, there's a great many high schools. There were certain schools in Akron that you went to if you wanted to be a football player, and certain ones that are better if you want to be a basketball player. And students would routinely make those kind of arrangements so that their child could be placed in the proper school. My biggest problem, I think, is the financial end of this. Catholic schools and private schools do not operate cheaply. I think the cost of Walsh right now per year is $13,800 a year. The average cost to educate a kid in a public school is $12,000, which is up quite a bit. It used to be like $4,000 or $5,000. I remember when I was
back
teaching.
in the good old days.
Back in the good old days, and that is dependent. That's the average cost. If you're an urban school, it's actually more. If it's a rural or a small town type school, it may be as low as $10,000 a year to educate that child. How is the government going to pay to provide that finance for that? Because I keep hearing, let the money go with the child. Well, if the money goes with the child, first of all, you would have to have enough money from all districts to cover every child, which would mean that you would not have that local control over how much money your community puts towards the education of your child, which may be a good thing if it were more standardized. I think Pennsylvania does something similar to that.
But it occurs to me that a child leaves a public school that's paying $12,000 a student and goes to a private school. It's one thing to say, let the money follow the child, but that expenditure stays at the public school. It's.
I don't think so. I mean, in the proposals that I've seen, the money wouldn't go to the public school. It would go to the private school that was taking tuition.
What I'm talking about, the cost of running the Wadsworth High School does not go down by $12,000 just because a kid left.
Oh, no, I see what you're saying. No, you're absolutely right. Just because you have, 2 more kids, per class in a particular situation, doesn't, or you take away 2 kids, doesn't mean the cost is any more. You still need that teacher.
All the fixed costs are
all
still
the fixed stuff that goes with it. My concern is, though, that what I'm seeing in a lot of states, they're saying, well, we'll give the kid $5,000 or we'll give them this voucher. Well, you're not covering the cost of that child. So you are still limiting the choice for those that are wealthy enough to pay for that extra tuition out of their own pocket, as opposed to providing this free public education. Plus, if you draw off that top student, if the student that is difficult, what is going to be left within the public schools are the more expensive students to teach. And it is more expensive to teach a student that has special needs of some way. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. That is great. And I had many special needs students in class. I had a young lady that was deaf, and there was a lady that spoke American Sign Language and sat in the front of the room and signed for her. I had another student who was blind, and we had to produce all of the tests, all of our books in Braille, extremely high cost. We had a special education unit for those students that had behavioral disorders.
Okay. As I understand it, and my exposure right now is only network news, the people who would like to see school choice, every student has a choice, are mainly concerned about the political education that they think is going on in public schools. The woke movement, in some people's minds, has taken over public schools.
I would argue that it's not being taken over. And when
I want to hear from Ron.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I don't have a whole lot to add to this, really. You're right about the political thing, and here's a good example of that. Is just recently, it was discovered that here in northwestern Ohio, there was a group supplying anti-Semitic and neo-Nazi materials to homeschools. So and they were found out and got stopped, but in the meantime, they disseminated a great many materials to people. So this is one of my concerns about this, is the accountability and the supervision of both charter schools and homeschooling.
Right.
The only two examples that I know of my own particular, a couple of relatives, one in Pennsylvania where a cousin homeschooled her oldest son because he was on the autistic spectrum and had special needs. It did pretty well because he's starting his senior year in college this year. So that was successful. And I don't know what the financial system was, but I know that the state did supply the materials for this. There was a special program that she was able to tap into, or they were able to tap into, and get materials for this. Obviously, didn't pay her to be a teacher, but that's what happened. And in California, both my grandchildren went to private schools for various reasons. One, my granddaughter was very, very smart and went to a small private school and then to a Catholic high school, and just received her master's degree in forensic psychology. So she's done very well. My grandson went to a school for special needs. He had some physical disabilities, some problems with hearing and not cognition at all, but just some physical things. And he went to a school that was set up to be very diverse and had students of all sorts of special needs and all sorts of abilities and so forth. They got him into that, and then he went to a regular high school, and has just started college. So in those cases, worse. And again, I don't know the financial arrangement there. But here's the situation here a couple of years ago. What was the name of the charter school? ECOT, was it?
Yeah.
That they basically embezzled money,
Exactly.
and the students did not really get the education they were being paid for. So I think.
But then the
that's a
parents had the
problem.
right to take them out of that school and put them someplace else.
Yeah, but it didn't happen. Apparently,
Oh,
they didn't.
really?
They weren't aware that it was happening. That the kids were not
But
being.
when they became aware,
then the
they
whole
had
thing
options.
collapsed.
But then
on
they
them,
lost
but-
like 2 years of education, too.
They lost 2 years of education.
Yeah.
Basically. So
Yeah, well,
now I
that's
know
a
that
bad
we've
thing.
talked again about the problems of how you test and how you hold students accountable, and then problems of teaching to the test rather than teaching what the students need,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. But there's got to be some kind of standards, and I think that the state does need to take over that. On the other hand, I'm concerned that recent proposals in the state government to change the State Board of Education and make the members appointed all by turn it into basically a bureaucracy, a government bureaucracy, rather than going with the state school board.
That would be helpful, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to make it a political arm.
So I think that's a problem.
Okay, which brings me around to one of the other concerns that I've had. It seems as though a lot of people in the country are upset with their school boards, and they find them unresponsive to the wishes of the parents. And in fact, parents have been hauled out for being rowdy at school board meetings and all that. But the thing is, who pays attention to the when you're looking at the ballot for school board candidates? How do you know? I mean, we don't know who those people are. In a small town like Wadsworth, you know, well, I saw that name the last election, so we'll pick that one again.
Yeah. And you may know some of them too. It is a
because it is small
town.
But how is the school board supposed to be responsive to students or to the population when the population doesn't really know who they're voting for?
No.
Well, you know, there are ways though to find out about those candidates. You know, at least in Wadsworth, we have a forum, a voter forum at the library. This year was held up here at the high school, but they can listen to their positions. They can talk to them. They can contact them. They put literature out. You have an idea.
Yeah, I recall. I know this last election when the school board members, I was reading about them, and I made some choices based on what these folks were saying. You know.
And you can make an informed choice if you choose to go out and find the information. Unfortunately, too many voters, and not just for school boards, vote. I want to vote for
whatever.
Whatever, you know. I have a kid by that same name, so, you know, that kind of thing. So that creates a problem.
Absolutely.
But, you know, I don't know. I think what you mentioned parents and being disruptive, and there's been a lot of talk about that. Parents were hauled out of school boards, but it was being a little more than disruptive. They were making violent threats against school board members. They threatened to go to their homes. They showed up at their homes. They threatened, you know, they got death, you know, threats. There's no excuse for that. And it's not that school boards do not want to listen to parents. It's just that they cannot succumb to that kind of pressure or threat.
Yeah, but case in point here, with the mask requirements, so many school boards are stood up to voices from the community say, no, we will enforce these mask requirements in the schools, and you know, I don't care how much you do. This is the right thing to do. So there's all this. Isn't there always this balance between the people and the government? Is the government Big Daddy that takes care of all your needs, or do you have to listen? There's got to be there's always a balance and a give and take there, and that's good. I mean, that's one of the functions of our democracy is to have this balance and have this debate.
Shifting a little bit, Patty, as a local teachers union president for a period of time. There's a lot of concern that teachers unions are more responsible to some special interests and political interests than they are the interest of students. What do you say about that?
Well, you know, I totally disagree with that. But
oh, really?
Yes.
What a surprise.
First of all, though, you have to, you know, understand, and I think this is a fair statement to make, that a teachers union is not just there for the student. That union was formed for the benefit of the teachers.
Absolutely.
You know, to make sure
like any union.
Like any union would be, to make sure they have fair pay, that they have good job conditions that make it easier to teach the student. You know, many times when I had to deal with a confrontation or a problem in the school district, it was because of the fact that a teacher was not able to do their job because of a certain situation that occurred in the district. So to say that they're not, you know, just working for the kids. No, that purpose is not just for the kids. You know, but what was the other thing you said about the, in your question about, you said...
well, I thought I asked it rather clearly.
You did. I just escaped my mind.
That
this
the
is the age, folks.
the leadership in the teachers union, not talking about the local leaders, but I'm talking about the national leaders, about their special interest.
Well, you know, when I was as president of the union, I quite often would go to candidate interviews where we would invite in all the Republican, all the Democratic candidates for local congressional seats in the state and national, and would interview them. And very honestly, more often than not, the one party was more interested in aligning with teacher goals and supporting unions than the other was. One of them did not believe in unions at all. So why would the union support a candidate who wants to create a right to work state in Ohio? Why would a teachers union support a candidate that wanted to take all of our STRS money and put it into Social Security? That wasn't going to happen. So yes, is it skewed towards one party? I would say yes, but because that's the party that's going to fight for teachers and to fight for the education system, in my opinion, over the other.
Going in a slightly different direction. I know a family member of mine who is a public school teacher.
Yes.
A music teacher, and I guess I mentioned that because of what I'm going to say next. Here is a seasoned professional musician who has been teaching high school students for several generations now. It gets mandates from some faceless bureaucrat in Columbus that now tells him how to teach music.
Yeah, that's always a problem.
Say more than that about it. I mean, it seems to me that there should be a way around that. I mean,
well, that's why you keep control of curriculum for the most part.
Local.
In local. For example, like our school board approves textbooks, but those textbooks are picked out by a committee of, if it's a second grade textbook, all second grade teachers. So the professionals are making the choices, not a bureaucrat in Columbus saying, I don't like the looks of this particular book.
It's not the teachers and the school boards that are banning books.
No, it is not.
It's who is it that's banning books?
Well, it's community pressure and
the school board
and higher governments. I mean, look at Florida.
Yeah, Ron DeSantis has.
Somebody pointed out Florida is 1930s Germany with oranges. It's just
what?
So.
Yeah, DeSantis has put forth certain books that would not be allowed, or certain things that are not allowed to be taught. So he is making that decision, and my problem with this is he's making it from a political standpoint and what his political party feels, as opposed to what is historically accurate. And he's doing it in all subjects. You would think it would apply to history maybe, or possibly science, but in the math curriculum, if you can't add 3 + 3, why are you determining what is needed within a math curriculum?
I think in Ron DeSantis' case, he's already running for president.
Oh yeah,
yes,
he has been.
He thinks that'll help.
He does, and he has a huge, following.
Yeah.
In many polls, he's way ahead of Trump right now. So.
Okay, very good. I thank you very much for your contributions, and that ends today's program. Hopefully.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.